Hey, welcome to Talk Time. This week we have a great big dollop of green in the studio in the shape of a Z900 RS Cafe. So what we have here is a beautifully styled retro Kawasaki Z900. This giant round headlight, it's carried forward and mimicked by these round mirrors. We've also got a lot of round, we've got the round clocks here. All of this looks is underpinned by very modern engineering. We've got these 41mm upside down forks. Down here are two-pot. We've got two sets of two-pot radially mounted monoblock calipers, unusual on a bike of this class. They're gripping a 300mm front disc, and we're running 17-inch cast road wheels with a 120/70/17 fairly generic Dunlop. Coming back up to the left side, traditional cable clutch, plenty of feel, very direct action, and a Kawasaki own branded front brake master cylinder. Overall, this bike weighs a not insubstantial 215 kilograms. We have a very manageable 835 seat height, and this beautiful seat snuggles right into this teardrop tank, which really kind of gives the bike its look, and the paint quality is of such a high standard for a bike of this budget. This is an £11,000 bike. It just feels like most of that went into the paintwork. We've got a tubular steel trellis frame, which runs back into a welded subframe. So this is a single unit for rigidity and indeed flexibility. This frame has been modified to allow the line of that 17-litre tank to flow back all the way back in a very clean sweep to this cafe-specific seat unit. At the back here, we have a single shock in an unusual mounting. There's not a lot of space under there, so that's creative and quite clever use of the engineering. We do have preload adjustability and rebound adjustability on this rear shock. We're coming back into a conventional swing arm. It's a chain drive, and then we've got down at the back end, it's a single piston Nissan branded caliper. But it's on a bit of a cheap sort of generic looking disc with the ABS sensor just kind of stamped into it. It's almost like they've missed it at the back. They've just kind of fallen away slightly. But overall, yeah, it's very coherent. This bike is all about the styling. We've got this funky white mustache stripe here, which carries back into the tank, and as you can see, the engine is almost part of the styling. In a very traditional way, nothing is hidden. There's nothing to intervene between your eye and this engine. It's on show, it's visible. The whole 109 horsepower, 948cc, liquid cooled here, inline 4-cylinder. It's a direct overhead cam, and we've got some very nice fake cooling vents on the cylinder head there for a bit of authenticity. We are a 4-into-1 manifold, so 4 back into the single catalytic converter where it gathers to be an EU4 compliant engine. And on this particular one, someone's put a bit of a tasty Yoshimura can on the back. This is a used bike, but new. These are circa £11,000, which puts them in the territory of some decent rivals. Although that said, this looks and feels, the switch gear, especially the paintwork, the way it's bolted together, it doesn't feel like an £11,500 bike. It feels like something much, much more expensive. So with a hefty 73 foot-pounds of torque, this bike is banging directly on the door of the Triumph Thruxton R, which is 96 horsepower and 83 foot-pounds of torque. They are quite closely matched. And also, for a little bit less money, you could get the Yamaha XSR 900, a beautiful custom bike. It's 116 horsepower, so it's up on horsepower, but it's down on torque with 65 foot-pounds. It's a difficult choice to make, but my heart has always been with the big Kawasaki. On startup, this big Z900 just sits there and growls at you.
about 2,200 revs. It seems to be set very high when it's set when it begins, when it's cold. So it sits there and just growls, which sets the tone for the entire character and nature of this bike. It's slightly threatening, but also delightfully pleasing. That kind of suggests what we're about. Let's just clear the traffic. That's better. So, what is it? Well, it's a big green thing. And if it was nothing else but a big green thing, I would be quite happy with that. Because big green things are satisfying. You cannot get too much. Greens, they're good for you. Goodness me. Got a lot going on today, haven't we? Hey! Could be straw, but let's go with hey! Best not to. So, let's bumble. We'll bumble because it does bumbling just as well as it does everything else. I really like this bike. It's grown on me quite quickly. I love the way it looks, even though I'm absolutely nothing to do with the 70s. The 70s and I, yeah, there's a clear one. The 70s and I did not meet. When the 70s started, I was 2. So all of this round clock, Mickey Mouse ears, moustache paint, it's lost on me. And if this bike didn't make sense in the here and now, then I wouldn't have a lot of time for it. But I do, and it does. It's one of those things where you just get into the flow. Your speed is plenty, and you're picking up corners, you're choosing your lines, but most importantly, you're enjoying yourself. It's not a motorway missile, it's a B-road blaster. Yee! It's plenty quick enough. If you need to go quicker, then get the train. But what you won't get on the train is the amount of enjoyment that you get from something like this. It's genuinely likable, it's tactile, you've got plenty of feel from the front end. I'm not asking too much from the suspension. I'm not, well, you know, you could feel it over the rough stuff there, it kind of jiggles a little bit. But it does its job extremely well. Volvo. Can we? We can. And that's the thing with this bike. Whatever you ask of it, it can. Yes. Yes, Nick, I'll do that. I'm absolutely fine. Third gear corner, blind, a little bit wet. And I'm happy to get my boot down. My boot's down. It lets you feel that you're exploring the ranges of a bike rather than it always being out of reach. Some of the limits of the modern day things are so high for you to raggle or razzle, or whatever the right word is, raggle or razzle, razzle or raggle. A Panigale, or an S1000RR, or a ZX10, even its top of the tree stablemate. You've really got to be going some. And that's what this is about. You have to imagine yourself in a slightly different time and place. In its day, what this bike is harking back to is something that's difficult for us to understand. This was the superbike of its day. When it says Cafe Racer, we're going back to a time where you didn't have a cafe on every corner. You didn't have a Costa or a Starbucks at every retail park. If you were a man, and you probably were riding one of these, you had 5 buttons undone, you had a medallion, you had an airy chest, and if you didn't, you need to stick something on there. And if you wanted a cup of coffee, which you probably didn't, because you drank beer directly from the pump, you would have to go to one of those greasy spoons. And a greasy spoon was not your little chef, which is gone now anyway, or M&S Moto. Oh look, there's an M&S at the side of the road. We can stop and get sandwiches and flowers and stock up on very healthy nuts and avocado. No siree. If you wanted to find yourself in a motorway service station, you had to go to an A road, because that's where the traffic was. The 70s, I imagine, because remember I was 2, was all about utilitarian. So it's about the utility factor. We don't have, or we do have, let's just go, there we go, yeah, we're going. We do have track days. We've got track day bikes, something that's totally unrelated to the road. It's a class in its own. We've got bikes that are race bikes for the road. And that's the key thing to bear in mind here. Cafe Racer was a race bike for the road. This was the top of the tree. This was the big kahuna. So you had to find yourself a greasy spoon at the side of an A road, which would be a good few miles away. And if you wanted to get there, you'd probably have to race your mates, which is fair. That's what mates are for, is it not? So we've got this kind of retro class of bike that just looks pretty and speaks of a time that most of us don't know anything about. 70s, 80s, 90s, 20, 21, 22. You'd be about 70 if you actually remembered what this bike is touching into. So that kind of has to go out the window. Does it go? Oh yes it goes. It's a lovely, creamy, smooth, inline 4-cylinder that makes a big deal about its direct overhead cam. Don't know why, doesn't matter. It's like the turbo stickers that were on cars of the 80s. Obviously in the 70s, a direct overhead cam was a very, very big deal. And I can see why. Because this is smooth. Smooth and grunty. But that's not what the bike's about. The bike is about being in the flow at not sensible limits, but semi-sensible limits. You can feel where it's running out of grip. You absolutely can. And it's not so far away that you have to have your ear down, scratching along. It's a can-do sort of thing. The brakes are absolutely can-do. They do the job beautifully. They even look good. The forks soak everything up, as forks absolutely should. If it gets caught on the rough, it shittles around a bit. But you know, a lot of that might be down to the tyres. I'm not overly smitten by the tyre choice. Let's go disco. Yes. The tyres are acceptable. I'd love to know just what this could do on a very good set of tyres. Something sticky, this way cometh. Something sticky would make a big difference to this. This just feels good. We're not going quickly now. We're on little roads, pretty little roads. I'm only doing 60 in fourth. But I'm happy. Can you tell? I'm a happy bunny. It's not trying to kill me. I'm sure it would if I provoked it, but there's no point provoking it. It wants to work with you. It wants you to be having just as good a time as it's having. We're having a good time. You could spend £11,000 comfortably on a sandals holiday. I've heard of, and even some people who do speak to me. They're in my circle of people. I've got a circle of people. Shop at Waitrose, spend £11,000 on a couple's sandals holiday for two. 11,000, first class. It's on a closed resort, you know. But that's missing the point. This gets you out there. The controls are nice. The mirrors are nice. I like Mickey Mouse. He never did anybody any harm. I'm not going to say it's like riding around on Mickey Mouse, because that would be a whole different thing altogether. Hey. But there's a sense of innocence about it. And I am absolutely not innocent. It's not about the technical details. Of course it is about the technical details. They all hang together very well. But I'm out on a sunny September morning stroke afternoon. I'm on a road that nobody else is. Nobody's on this road. It's just me and Kawasaki. And I'm having a very good time. Couple of things I don't like. Touched on one already. Tires. And although I've got more used to it, you kind of just adapt. I don't really like the throttle. Initially, if you only went for a short test ride, it could be enough to put you off. Didn't see that coming. It's snatchy. It's snatchy in every sense of the world. It's on, it's off. It actually almost spoils the experience. And then you change your riding style slightly. My goodness, it's a deal. It's just a small one. Hello. So you change your riding style and just kind of feather the clutch. You don't actually have to pull the clutch in. That's the cable clutch side of things. You can just feather it, change down, feather it, change up, feather it, change down. You get a sense for it. You can find the bite point without actually pulling it in. It's just a light two-finger whoop, and there we go. Up a gear, down a gear. This is beautiful. You know, when Scotland's lovely, it is just the very loveliest. I think I'm alone now. Well, she doesn't seem to be anyone around. I could have one of these. There was a time I nearly did have one of these. I got all excited about it. And I think I went to a showroom somewhere in Angers, en France. I was en France at the time. En France, where the cheese is very good and the wine is even better. Cheese is expensive and wine is like the women, very cheap and beautiful. Anyway, probably cut that piece, but maybe not. Oh, audible. I went to look at one of these Zs in a French showroom. Oh, now that's where the suspension does get lost. That was horrible. But then so certain sections of this road. And I am traveling too quick. I'm traveling quicker than it actually wants to. Do you know it can meander? Went to have a look at one, fell in love with the paint finish, fell in love with the look of it. Everything about it was seductive. But I couldn't ride it. And if you don't know how something rides, you shouldn't really commit to it. Not until you're certain. And now, 3 or 4 years down the line, because this bike's been out for quite a while, 2018 maybe, I'm finally out on a 2 or 3 year old model with a couple of thousand miles. that just feels mint. Oh, Mr. Hall. Do you know, this probably doesn't cost much more than 7 grand as a used bike. I'll have a look when I get back. I may even find myself in one of those Auto Trader classifieds desperation moves, scouring the country. Are you a low to high kind of guy, or you're a high to low? If I'm buying a car, I put in the mileage and go low to high. Oh, jeez. If I'm going for a motorbike, I put in the very lowest mileage and go high to low. Because you want the best, don't you? You want the best, you're worth the best. You know you are. This is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. It's true. Greens are good for you. Would I rather be on the Triumph? Nah. What about the XSR? That's a tricky looking little thing. Yes, it is. But it's not for me. It's trying a little bit too hard. This isn't actually trying hard at all. And as a result, it is a storming motorcycle.
So I'll just put that back over where we started this morning after a fairly long and exciting day. What a cracking motorcycle. I have to say, this has rekindled my latent love for Kawasaki. I have become a bit of a BMW fiend in recent times. I've got this blue and white body, but you still have a beating green heart. And to some extent, I needed this. I needed to get back on something that you can push around, something that wriggles around underneath you, something that you've actually got to manhandle. It reminds me why I like riding motorcycles, and it also reminds me why I like riding them quickly. When you get into the flow and you actually put a couple of corners together, you string them together, this bike absolutely works with you. I can feel my enthusiasm running through me and struggling to put it into words, but it's brilliant. It's not too much, it's not too little. It's a bit of a Goldilocks bike. It's absolutely, oh, giving you a thumbs up. It's not my normal thing, but it's good, it's great. I love it. So this morning we did touch very briefly on the Triumph Thruxton R, which is a direct competitor, and of course the Yamaha XSR. Would I, now I've ridden this bike, change my mind? Would I go in one of the other directions rather than, no, that's actually nonsense. I'd stick with this. I wouldn't go anywhere. Much though I like them and I like what they do, there is something quite special about this bike, really. There's something quite special, more than the sum of its parts, and this is the one. So if you liked what you've seen, then like, and if you want more, subscribe, and then join me next week for something altogether different.